Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Carry On Camping from 1969, directed by Gerald, and of course, the 17th Carry On film in this series. So yes, we are back once again ready to discuss Carry On the channel. This time around, one of the most iconic films in this series, no doubt, and there will be a spoiler warning for this discussion. If you haven't seen this film, I would highly recommend seeing this one first and then come back to this video. We can talk about this film in the comments and of course, all things Carry On. So yes, with all that said, let's discuss my thoughts on this film, and what can I say? Saw it again yesterday, last night, and you know, I've seen this one many times. Growing up, this and Carry On Doctor are the ones that I saw the most, and you know, many times, and just ingrained in my memory really. And you know, I did review this way back, you know, 5 years ago, more than that now, you know, on the channel, and you know, so I wanted to give this a proper review, and also with a completely different rating this time round. But yes, this film I love so much, so many different iconic moments. I think, just like the very best Carry On films as well, you know, we have really some of the greatest roles, at least for a lot of the cast members. You have loads of the cast members in this, regulars, and I think, you know, defining, you know, iconic characters they played, and you know, really the feel of this as well. You know, the atmosphere, you know, and the fact it is just more you know, kind of laid back, kind of adventure road trip film at times, and just a very simple premise of, you know, camping, of course, and it's very British, you know, in that sense as well. And yeah, just something that, you know, starts off, you know, perfectly with the setup of the characters, has, you know, a bit of a funny ending, you know, you could say, but you know, consistently, you know, I personally feel this is one of the absolute funniest Carry On films, you know, in this series. And I just think, you know, Sid James in this film in particular as well, his greatest role for me is the defining Sid James role. You know, everything all in one really that I love about Sid James, and there's a few of those roles, you know, throughout the series really. Carry On Cleo as well, you know, it's another one of the best that he done, and just so many great roles. But I think Carry On Camping, you know, is the defining you know, greatest role, and his team up with Bernie, of course, being played by Bresslaw, you know, I just think it is priceless. I think this double act is just one of the most enjoyable, you know, in the entire series. And what I love about this film so much as well, you know, it's just the different groups of characters, the clusters, of course, that go their own, you know, ways you know, to the campsite, and then they do eventually meet up around the 50-odd minute mark is when they're all really in the campsite, and you know, then it all kind of goes down, and we have, as I say, a funny ending with the hippies coming in, you know, there. But the ending itself, you know, I do, you know, really love, and I just think it's quite bizarre, you know, here and there, you know, in the final act. But you know, I think mostly this film is so consistent. The writing is just top form, and you know, the way we start off, we have, of course, Bernie, we have Sid James playing Sid Boggle, and we have Joan Sims, Lilith Day as well, playing Joan Fussy, and Anthea as well, her friend, and you know, they're kind of watching this kind of film, of course, about this campsite, this nudist campsite, of course, and Sid Boggle, you know, is trying to essentially get them, you know, these couples to go to this nudist, you know, campsite, of course, and it doesn't go according to plan, as we know, but you know, I love the way it opens up, seeing this, and you know, the reactions from you know, Joan Sims especially, and just the people in the audience as well, you know, kind of stuff, and going off, of course, and Sid James, you know, Sid Boggle kind of falling into that woman there, you know, at the end of that bit. But yes, you know, it leads into, we have, you know, establishing of the different characters, getting to know them. Also, we have Terry Scott playing Peter Potter, of course, and you know, his wife Harriet Potter is played by Betty Marsden, and you know, this is easily one of the funniest, you know, pairings, couples in the entire film, and I just love the way this starts off. You know, the first act is in many ways, you know, the funniest, you could say, but you know, the whole film is, but you know, I think the way in which Terry Scott, you know, just begs really, you know, his wife to kind of go abroad for once, and of course we learn that they've been going camping for many years, and you know, she just kind of takes control in that sense, and he shows her, you know, brochures, and you know, just desperate to not go camping, and then he, of course, he gives in, and they go camping on the tandem bike, and you know, I love that moment when you think it's going to be a car, and then you know, they do just, you go by the bushes there on the tandem bike, and just that leads to, you know, their adventure, and you know, I just love you know, this pairing, how Harriet, of course, doesn't really listen, you know, first of all, you know, Peter Potter is saying, and then you know, there is that final, usually the third, you know, thing that he says, that she kind of, you know, once he shouts as well, and then she kind of goes back to listening, and then she goes back again to, you know, not listening and saying a load of stuff, and it's just really hilarious that how it was done, and her laugh, of course, it's just one of the funniest things, especially at first, you know, coming out of nowhere, you know, that you know, maniacal laugh there, and just the look on, you know, Terry Scott's face, you know, at times in this film is absolutely priceless. You know, his very dry reactions, subtle humour there, and I just love Terry Scott in this film. Easily my favourite as well. Terry Scott performance. So you've got Sid James, Terry Scott at their best. Bernard Bresslaw, I personally feel as well, is at his very, very best in this film, really, and just the pairing, as I say, between Sid James and Bernard Bresslaw, it's never been more enjoyable, more funny, more charming, and I think it's more reminiscent of a classic kind of pairing. For example, like Laurel and Hardy's got that kind of similar feel at times, and I just love how they kind of pairing with Joan Sims and Dilys Day in this film as well. It really is perfect. Also, we have the legendary Kenneth Williams, playing Dr. Soper in this film, and he pairs up with Matron, played by Hattie Jacques, of course. And this another appearance of this Matron character, and this could be again one of her very best roles in this film. I think the pairing between the two of them, Kenneth Williams, Hattie Jacques, wow. This is so priceless. I think the way it starts off and the way it ends, is very layered. Actually, it's a really, really interesting dynamic, and the way it kind of progresses. At first, it is quite different to how we go through, the rest of the film. The middle and the final act as well. And I think just all these different couples, they have, and pairings, and Kenneth Williams and Hattie Jacques, they're kind of in charge of this finishing school, and Barbara Windsor playing Babs, as the main kind of student, as we know, of this finishing school, and they go on this trip, and I love how one of the best things is how it takes a very long time really for all the characters to kind of meet up, the groups and the pairings and stuff, to meet at this actual campsite, and for them to actually interact. We have most of the characters really on their own. We've got the four main characters. We've got Dr. Soper, and of course Matron, played by Hattie Jacques, and the girls, from the finishing school, kind of going on the coach, the bus, in their own separate, little adventure. We have Charlie Muggins being played by, of course, the great Charles Hawtrey, in this film. One of his best roles as well. He really gets, gets under people's skin in this film. I just think the way in which he, meets up with Peter Potter, and of course Harriet as well, kind of gets in their way, comes into the tent, bizarrely at night with them, and, ends up, sleeping in their tent, which is so bizarre. It's just hilarious, because then it gets in the way of course, Peter's, his kind of, his experience, and, he hates this even more, this camping experience. It kind of, in that sense, goes down, you could say, as one of the worst, and also one of the best, kind of experiences for Peter, because in the end, as we know, it does lead to him kind of saying, we're not going camping again, and, the kind of dynamic that, the relationship is more solid, you could say, in the end, and they're kind of listening to each other more, and, that's kind of partly because of this final camping trip in that sense. So I love the way it's all done. You've got, obviously, Charles Hawtrey in the middle there, and all these different groups, these characters, they're so well defined in this film, I feel. The writing by Talbot Rothwell, it's one of his best scripts for me. It's just got so much iconic moments and really interesting ways in which the characters are developed, scenarios for the characters to really shine, and we have, of course, eventually, Peter Butterworth playing Mr. Fiddler, and he, in charge of the campsite, and just kind of wheezing his way, to kind of get more and more money up the characters, and especially Sid James. Just his reactions there, is so funny when he keeps asking for another pound, and just the way in which Peter Butterworth is kind of desperately, his reactions, just to seeing the money, it's just so funny, and I love the way in which he played this character of Mr. Fiddler here. It's just one of his best roles, and it's so memorable, and very unique as well, very different to a lot of the characters that he played really throughout the series, and I have said how much I love Peter Butterworth in this series, and I've talked about recently Karen Screaming, and this is another one of his kind of iconic and most enjoyable roles, really, and just the way in which he kind of does all the characters out of money more and more. It is really hilarious, and I think, as I say, the way it sets up the characters, the first act is just perfect, and we have Amelia Bailington as well, playing Mrs. Fussy, the mother of Joan Sims in this film, and I love as well, that's another thing, how that starts off, in this kind of more conflict, more tension, with her, and just this, frustrating character, who you just kind of are glad to see the back of, and I love how in the final moments we do have her returning, saying she's so worried about Joan Sims, in particular, her character of Joan Fussy, that, she wanted to kind of come along, for the trip, and, it's very short-lived, because then the goat, chases her, off the campsite, and that is the final moments there. But I love how that's brought back into the film. It's so well thought out, this one. The hippies, I will say briefly on that, how they kind of come into the film, in the final act. It's always more and more I watch this, it's less screen time for me and less frustrating and silly than I kind of first thought. I think really I've come around to it more, but it is still the weakest aspect of this film. The film for me doesn't really have any flaws too much at all. It's just a classic carry-on film, a classic British comedy film. But I think the hippies coming in there, there are some moments that I really like. I think it's quite epic actually how bizarre how Bernie and Sid dress up, of course, in disguise, and they kind of feed the thing through all the dancing hippies, of course, and then they blow up the machine and all this. It's really funny. The speakers there and kind of sabotage this. I think it is quite epic, and the way the music is done there, it's quite cool. But I think overall it is just a bit too silly, and it does take away a little bit from that final act, just in a way. And it's 5 or 6 minutes. I originally thought in my mind it was more kind of 10, 15 minutes, that the hippies are kind of dancing and stuff and all this, but it is a lot less than that, and actually it doesn't really have much screen time at all, but it is still there, and it's something that I just wish the film had ended perhaps in a different way. And also the last slight I have for the film is it's just a bit too short for me, and I don't usually complain about that with the carry-ons, because you kind of expect that with the carry-ons. They are very, very short. The longest is Karen screaming really, and I think that's obviously still 96 minutes or so, obviously, but I think this one could have been, because they take so long to all kind of meet up at the campsite, and because we have got that hippie moment there and stuff in the sequence, but I think it could have been at least 90 minutes, just really had more of a final act there and more of a wrap up of certain things, but I think again, because of the structure of this film and the way it kind of has this very particular tone for the Karen films, and it is this adventurous trip out, I think it doesn't really take away from the film too much, but I would have preferred just a slight a preference there for it to be longer and had a slightly different way in which some of this comes together. But as I say, that final act is hilarious. I love of course the girls taken from the campsite by the hippies, and they're on the kind of the thing there and driving off, and it just as well, I think very bizarre, because what would really have happened there, they're not going to be taken away forever, and they would have just been back to the finishing school eventually, and Dr. Soper's reaction there, and of course Matron, it's just really hilarious. It leads to them going on the tandem bike, and in the midst as well we have Charles Hawtrey, Charlie Muggins being just seated very strangely, amongst the girls there, smiling, and it's kind of like a Where's Wally character type thing, where and no one really draws attention to his presence there, and he just kind of goes off, and he's in the middle there, of all the characters, everyone's reaction to the girls, to the hippies, and all this, but Charles Hawtrey he's going unnoticed, and it's just very, very funny there. I love that, and just some of the interactions, the way the characters are brought together there to kind of for this common goal to get rid of the hippies of the campsite, for the noise situation and all this, and Mr. Fidder as well, wanting to get rid of this, and I like how the characters come together, but personally it could have perhaps been an even better way in which the characters had teamed up there, and not necessarily being this kind of group of hippies coming along doing this kind of you could say generic silly hippie stuff, and but it is a real slight for me. It's not something that is massive major, it's just something I think could have been replaced, and that final act or final 10 minutes could have been even better, but until that we have really a perfect carry-on film. I just love seeing the way in which all the characters are kind of journeying as well. The road trip feel this film has. I love how we have Anthea being travel sick, of course, something I related to throughout my life, and just seeing the reactions from Sid James, and Joan Sims as well, and they're kind of and the way in which she's given this smelling salt as well. Bernie then Bernard Bresslaw is kind of saying she'll never get it in that, and it's obviously not realising it's to smell, and then he smells it, and it reminds it says it reminds him of the breakfast they have, and all these things have kind of a ripple effect throughout a lot of the film, and I just think so many different moments. I love the way in which they're introduced, the way things develop, all these characters, and along the way we have so much great slapstick. I love one of my favourite moments is when Peter is being chased by the bull, and Harry of course saying it's okay, they only go for red, and he's got a red napkin on there, and just being chased out of the field, and kind of rammed out of over the fence there, over the hedge, and just absolutely hilarious, and just this this chemistry between Harriet and Peter in this film is one of my favourite moments, and just we have this classic comedy throughout the film, and I just love all the pairings, as I say. Bernard Bresslaw and Sid James, just so many moments throughout this on the way, and when they get to the campsite. One of my favourite, moments as well, when they kind of put up the tents there, and it takes them forever, and they end up as well, when they get in their one, putting the light out, and Bernie goes for the rubber dinghy, the kind of the strap there, and just inflates, in the tent, and that leads to them, kind of catching a cold overnight, and it's just so funny. Sustained sequences, of kind of tension and comedy combined, and it's just classic scenarios, the setup, and when we've got as well early on, some of my favourite moments again is just Dr. Soper and Matron. We have of course them at night time, the mix-ups with Barbara Windsor, Babs of course, kind of mixing up the room numbers there, and constantly, and we have Dr. Soper kind of going in just in the shower scene there, that is hilarious. Him thinking he's grabbing the shower control there. It's actually Matron, of course, as well, him going into the bed at night, and then just one of my favourite moments in this film is when he says, "Move over to Matron," just, in kind of an angry way, it's thinking it's going to be one of the other characters, the guy there, just Julian Holloway, of course, and I think just the reaction there when he realises it's Matron, is so funny, and just Barbara Windsor in this film is so great. Of course, you've got the iconic sequence when, involving the bra later on, but I think some of the funniest moments with her is also when she's kind of playing pranks, on, of course, Dr. Soper and Matron. And one of the greatest turns in this film is how, of course, we have Matron at first, being shocked by Dr. Soper, of course, the accidents, though, that do take place, and then she thinks he's actually, fancies her, and then she, has been realising, that she actually, likes him, and then we've got that kind of switcheroo there where Matron is kind of trying to advance towards Kenneth Williams' character of Dr. Soper, and he doesn't want this, so we have that kind of change, kind of early on after the first act of the film, and that that changes so much, in the way in which the comedy is done, and this relationship, this dynamic, in the film, and it's all because of the pranks really that were played on them, and the accidents that took place. So I love how these different scenarios and things that happen to them, these events, then change the relationship and what we're watching on screen throughout the rest of the film. It adds this tension, and completely flips really this dynamic in the film, and just as well, one of the funniest moments with them is when she's really kind of making advances towards him in the tent later on, and then they are distracted, of course, by the hippies, and his reaction there, and just as well, though, probably maybe the funniest moment in this film, or at least one of the top three, is when they're at night time, of course, staying with the girls and all this, and just I think they're going on about the rooms, and allocating the different rooms to the girls and stuff, and then we have him saying Matron's number, and just Kenneth Williams here, it's one of the best lines, the way he delivers this in the entire series, and essentially just saying that no one's going to be disturbing you, Matron, and it's just the way he says this, and the kind of reaction on Hattie Jacques' face, it's just, it had me laughing out loud again. It's just one of the funniest moments, because it's just such a horrible thing to say. It's just the way in which it's done, Kenneth Williams here, wow, it's just absolutely hilarious, and just their relationship is one of the best in the film, and I love how things progress as well gradually with Joan Sims, Sid James, of course, Bernard Bresslaw, and Dilys Day, and perhaps Dilys Day could have had her character of Anthea could have had a bit more development, but I think really it doesn't hurt the film too much. I think these couples as well, it's just so great, and perfectly cast, of course, and I just think Joan Sims and Sid James together in various Carry On films is just a great pairing, and in this film it's probably in a way never been better, and I think Joan Sims is definitely one of her best characters in this film, and just wow, what can I say? Even the use of music in this film, from the opening credits all the way to the end, it's just so magical, and it's epic in places, and it's just a very innocent film. This, for the most part, I think it's highly investing. The narrative, the arcs for the characters, it's very subtle and grounded at times, especially with, very relatable with Peter Potter, of course, Terry Scott, his arc, particularly, kind of exposition and the kind of a nice backstory and interactions with Harriet and Peter and, of course, Mr. Fiddler. Just the fact that he says, he recognises them and they've got this kind of relationship they've built up because, he does know them, that they've been going for many, many years, and it just kind of adds the hilarious nature to the whole, Peter's struggle and the fact that he hates going camping, but they've been so many times, they're kind of almost friends with the owner here of the campsite and, Mr. Fiddler, and it's just a really nice way as well, that the fact that we've, the exposition there is quite subtle in places, and I just think it's so grounded and realistic at times, but it is kind of this fantastical feel that this one has, surreal elements, but really it's this kind of dreamlike effect at times even it has, and the way it's shot, the use of music, it's very just innocent, and just one that I can watch and be so comforted by, and I just think this really is one of the most magical Carry On films once again in the series. I think the locations here, the actual campsite when they get there and the way it's shot, as I say, and just the editing in this film, it has such a nice flow, and things gradually unfold. I think it really is perfect until the last sort of 10-15 minutes when I think there's a few flaws here and there, and things I think it could have been longer and a bit more things could have culminated in a slightly different way for me, but really that's the only slight flaws I have with this film, and other than that it really is a flawless Carry On film, really until that bit there, and I think all the characters, as I say, the writing in this film, the locations, just this tranquil feeling, it's pure escapist, this one, really, just the fact that they are going on this road trip, this adventure to the campsite where they're just going to be simply camping. Of course, it's a great way to kind of do this, and the way it's kind of built up, progresses, and culminates mostly it's pretty much flawless. I just love Acts 1, 2 and 3 to this film, the structure, the way it kind of progresses, things change along the way. As I say, the third act is mostly great, it's just slightly flawed there and it could have been a bit better, but really most of the entire film is perfect for me, and I think just as well, even the references are so well thought out. We have a nice little nod to Karen Doctor, and we have Matron, of course, referring to essentially Kenneth Williams' character in that film, and saying he looks just like you, and it's a great little moment, of course, not overdone, just a very quick moment there, and we have that kind of nod to Carry On Doctor, and kind of tying this universe together in that sense, and a nice, quirky little moment there, and I just love that, and I think in this film as well, one of my favourite moments is, thinking it's with Kenneth Williams, as he gets, in the showers, and Sid James, of course, he's kind of looking through the hole, and they go off, and kind of caught in the act, and Kenneth Williams comes in and just walks through and just sees the hole, and for some reason, he wants to look through the hole as well, and then he gets toothpaste, in his eye, and as well, just after that, we have to kind of drawing attention to that subtly as well. When they get back in the coach, the bus, to that, and saying he caught a fly in his eye, and it's so well thought out, this film, and the different scenarios and how they have an effect throughout different parts of the film. Just the whole sense of layers as well to this film, and how early on it's very much kind of complex, because we have Sid Boggle and Bernie, of course, trying to hide the whole nudist campsite from the partners, and obviously Bernie at various points in the film before they get there kind of keeps about to be giving this away, and kind of revealing the kind of surprise to, of course, the couples, to the two women there, and I think it's so funny how we have constantly Sid kind of stopping this from happening, of course Bernie is just kind of a bit slower of a character, and he keeps kind of almost revealing this to Joan Sims and Dilys Day and their characters, and it's just so funny, and the whole kind of irony of when they get there, it's not actually the nudist camp, and then they want to leave, the men, and then of course the women want to stay, so it's just so funny, the up and down nature of this film, and just so many different moments as well. I love the way in which it culminates as well with Charlie and obviously Peter Potter and Harriet. Just that frustrating aspect of Charles Hawtrey's character, and the way in which finally in the end, he's thrown out of the tent, and the insane nature of this when he gets the soup poured on his head and all down him, and it's just so bizarre there. But it is this kind of oddly satisfying way, how Peter in the end and Harriet are, kind of a stronger couple, and just the way in which that culminates, it is still warm and charming, and just the way in which Charlie Muggins, throughout this film, is kind of on his own again, but then he gets in the way of different characters and what's going on with them. It's just perfectly done once again, and just this entire film, as I say, is so well thought out. The writing is spot on. The visuals, it's not one of the very, very best. I think there's a couple in terms of the visuals to the carry-ons at the top of this one, but for what it is, just this lovely, countryside, viewing that, and just this campsite, I think is so well shot, and just the music, it's just combined, the editing to create this, really nice, pleasant, experience, and just this adventurous film at times, and grounded, kind of situation-based, kind of comedy, and I just think, the final act, while it has some flaws, I do love the way in which it ends, and all the characters, how they start to, really gradually meet up, and all the ones we've been seeing individually. It's just so satisfying and novel to see that, and how they're all at the campsite in the end, and not what a lot of the characters were expecting for different reasons, but they are all there in the end, and teaming up for the against the hippies in the end for the most part, and individually we do see at least a nice wrap up of the individual threads, the arcs in this as well. Right after that, and ending with the mum, of Joan Sims, of Joan, of course, Mrs. Fussy, coming in there and immediately being chased away, and that is the film. It's these things these characters have been putting up with throughout the film, and in the end they can't take it anymore, and they just think, what the heck. And of course, the goats being let loose there, it's just priceless. And really, some of the most iconic moments, of course, are in this last sort of half an hour or so. Obviously, the brass sequence, very iconic, and just different moments in this film, and really the fact that Sid James, and of course Bernard Bresslaw, their characters do not meet Barbara Windsor really until this sort of last half an hour of the film. That's it's quite insane really. Because we've got some of the most iconic moments with them together and stuff, and the whole drama that happens there, and just the way in which that adds another element of tension amongst the couples there, and Joan Sims, of course, plays this perfectly, her reactions there. So really, this entire film, it's just scene after scene, sequence after sequence, act after act of just carry on goodness, and it's just a classic carry on film, as I say. And if this film is not the best, it's at least one of the very, very best for me. And so overall, my rating for this film is a 92%. So yes, what can I say? An extremely high score for me. This is simply, I had to give this this film this score. It couldn't have been any less, because it is one of my favourite, kind of British comedies, and among my favourite comedies really of all time. It's just the one that I've watched throughout my life so much, and it's just really, in many ways, it's the ultimate carry-on. So many iconic moments. A lot of the cast, given some of their very, very best roles. You've got Peter Butterworth, Charles Hawtrey as well as the kind of separate characters from the groups. But we have the dynamic of the various groups, and then the way they meet up as well. It's just so good, this film, and it's just hilarious. Scene after scene of just carry-on classic stuff. I think this film truly is, from start to finish, for the most part, a flawless carry-on film. It's just, as I say, in that final act, could have been a bit longer, could have been a slightly different way in which this, explosive, final sequence, took place, and all this, and how the characters are teaming up to kind of get rid of, an obstacle, for the characters. But, I think for the most part, it's so funny, this final act, even in the way in which Sid James, Bernard Bresslaw, Barbara Windsor as well, really interacting there, with the characters. We've got Dr. Soper as well, Matron, everything, the way it all kind of intertwines, and we've individually got used to the characters, built them up over the course of the film, and I think it's the genius way in which that's done. And then all the characters are let loose together in the kind of later stages of the film, and just the acting, the performances. Everyone in this film, even the very minor characters, play it so well, and just so many different iconic moments. And this film truly is one of my absolute favourite British comedy films. So yes, that's my thoughts on Carry On Camping. What do you think? It'd be really great to hear your thoughts on this film. What do you think on this? What's your personal experience when seeing this film over the years? Have you seen this growing up as well, and all this kind of stuff, and all things Carry On? How does this compare for you to the different Carry On films in this series? But yes, Carry On Camping, an absolute classic, one that I just love watching. And I just think it really puts me at ease. It's just so investing every single time. It's addictive nature of the narrative, and the progression of the plots of the characters, and different locations, and every single kind of location the characters are in. There's different and unique kind of scenarios, I think, for the characters to kind of delivered as comedy, and it's just the way in which the comedic sequences as well, and the situations, the events change the course of the film, and the dynamics of the characters of the groups, and it's so well done. Talbot Rothwell, hats off in the writing here, and I just think the ending as well. It's priceless, this one, and it's one of my personal favourites. At least in the Carry On series. I'm not really sure what the next one will be, but look out for that. And of course, until then, let's discuss all the carry-ons that I've talked about so far on the channel, and it'd be great and a pleasure as always to hear your thoughts in the comments. So yes, as always, take care and thanks for watching.